Many people are unaware that the shape of the gondola is asymmetrical. It is made that way to allow the gondolier to row from one side using just one oar. Buongiorno, and welcome to the Venetian Boatshop, where each week we will be exploring the rich culture of boats and boat building here in this most remarkable city. I'm Frank O'Halloran. On this episode, we will see how the asymmetry impacts the construction of the gondola that we will be building during the course of this series. Today, Tom and his crew will be building the frames that make up the internal structure of this fascinating boat. Then I'm going to go over to the Grand Canal for a rowing lesson with one of Venice's most talented gondoliers. Later in the show, Tom will visit the workshop of Maestro Piacentini, who comes from Venice's long tradition of decorative carving. We'll also have a little history lesson on the evolution of the gondola. And by the end of the show, we'll be able to recognize the shape of the gondola from its completed skeleton. So please join us at the Venetian Boatshop. In this city, where the streets are made of water, one can see almost any boat imaginable. But of course, the most famous is the gondola. But this boat is so difficult and time-consuming to construct that gondola building is almost a dying art. We're on our way to one of the few boatyards in Venice where gondolas are still made. But what's unique about this boatyard is that the man who runs it is actually an American boat builder from the mountains of North Carolina, a guy named Tom Price. Now, it may seem odd to you that Tom ended up here in Venice, but he comes from a part of North Carolina that is steeped in woodworking tradition. After several years of building boats in Maine, Tom fulfilled his dream of coming to Venice and apprenticed under a master gondola builder. It wasn't long before Tom opened his own boatyard, the Square Canaletto. Square means boatyard, and Canaletto, the famous Venetian artist, actually painted a scene of this very canal back in 1724. In that masterpiece, you can see this church right over here, and also that there was a square in this very spot over 300 years ago. It's not just gondolas that Tom builds here. This beautiful boat I've been driving in, called the Lido, along with many other kinds of watercraft, are designed and constructed right here at the Venetian Boatshop. So let's go inside and see what Tom and the crew are up to. In their work at Square Canaletto, Tom and his crew combined Tom's personal innovations along with traditional Venetian boat building techniques. Now, the first step in making most boats is to build the frames. Is that true with the gondola, Tom?
Sure. Like most things in Venice, there's a little bit of history behind it. In the days when the Arsenale shipyard was the largest in the world, 18,000 laborers were employed there. And the Venetian Republic grew forests on the mainland where they would actually bend the trees while they would grow so that they could have curved wood to make their boats with. Today, boatyards make their frames out of 3 pieces of wood, like this. It makes a frame, but due to the short grain, it's not very strong. At Squero Canaletto, we wanted to ensure that our frames would be very strong so that our gondolas would last for many years. So we came up with a process of making the frames so they would be just as strong as they were during the Venetian Republic. We use a process called laminating to make our frames. We glue 66 layers of veneer together using a glue which is safe for the environment and strong enough to withstand constant contact with salt water. We have to apply the glue to both sides of the veneer so that we get a perfect adhesion. After the glue has been applied, we put the packets of strips into the press to give it the proper curve and wait for the glue to dry. We call these glue-ups. At Squero Canaletto, we've designed our own press to form the glue-ups into the basic shape of the frame. Now these glue-ups need to dry for a little bit, so while we're waiting, Frank is going to take us out to show us some of the tricks of the gondolier's trade.
Here we are on the Grand Canal, and as you can see, we're in a gondola. We're being rowed by a good friend of mine, Eros. Eros has been a gondolier for 8 years, and I think he's one of the best gondoliers in Venice. Let's take a look at what he's doing, because rowing a gondola is really an art. Eros is doing the row which is called vogando in morso. Morso is the word in Italian for bite, and as you can see, the forcola, or the oarlock, there's actually a little bite taken off. In a Venetian boat, such as a gondola, Sandalo, all the other boats, there's no oar locks. That gives the gondolier a little more flexibility on his moves because he'll use different parts of the forcola for doing different things. When you see Eros take a step forward, he's doing that to give a little more energy to his row and have the boat go a little faster. The gondolier uses his oar as a propeller, offering passengers a smooth ride and beautiful scenery. There are many different rowing positions, including some that don't even involve using the oar. And to show you just what a good friend Eros is, he's now going to let me have a chance at rowing. I've rowed a gondola before, but like I said, it's an art, and he's going to give me a couple of tips.
Se è troppo, fai troppa fatica con poca rete. Se è troppo poca, fai poca fatica con poca rete.
Okay. So Eros is giving me the advice that I should be perfectly in balance between the energy I'm using, where the oar lands in the water, and how the boat goes forward.
Poi si può dire che la forcola è per la mia altezza. Tu sei un pochino più alto di me, per cui sarebbe basso.
Okay. The forcola, or the oar lock, has been custom made for Eros. And so it's designed especially for his size, considering his height. He's a little smaller than I am, but I think if we're going to criticize my rowing, it's more to do with my rowing and not with Eros's forcola. While I row us back to the Squero, Tom is visiting with one of the master carvers that actually does these beautiful wooden carvings you see on all the gondolas in Venice.
Basta così? Il ritardatatario della nuoto. Che venga a nuoto.
Bene così.
We're in the workshop with Emilio Piacentini. Emilio is the carver who decorates the gondolas, and right now he's working on a couple of pieces that will then be added to a gondola. Usually he actually goes into the boatyard and works directly on the boat, but for some of the pieces he brings them to his own workshop and carves them here. Emilio, what are you working on? Che pezzo è questo?
Questo è un pezzo che va sulla testata della gondola dove inizia la prua, dove va messa la porta di prua, diciamo.
So these pieces that he's working on are just pieces that are applied. That this actually goes right onto the aft end of the deck at the front of the boat. And there's an opening at the end of the deck, which is then covered by this door, which will also be carved. The wood that he uses is mostly cherry, but he also carves on the mahogany parts of the gondola. Emilio comes from a long tradition of decorative carving. He studied carving in school from a very early age and apprenticed under another master carver who taught him these Baroque patterns of carving, which is what we use on the gondolas.
Rowboats, in one form or another, have been plying these waters for centuries, but the origins of the gondola are somewhat mysterious. The oldest written document in existence that mentions the word gondola in reference to a boat is dated 1094, but it is entirely possible that the gondolas existed long before that. We get an understanding of what the ancient gondolas looked like from the paintings that have survived. The oldest images of the gondola are from the 1400s. It is interesting to note that the style of rowing at that time is almost exactly the same as the style of rowing we use today. The gondolas at that time were a little shorter than the contemporary gondola and much flatter along the waterline. There was a canopy that was used to shade the passengers, and often the boat was rowed by two oarsmen, one in the front and one on the stern. Looking at the gondolas in paintings from the 1500s, we see that a few changes have taken place. The gondola has grown slightly in length, and the bottom has become more curved along the length. The canopy has become more protective, and the iron protection on the bow, called a ferro, has been beaten out by the blacksmith to raise the stem heads. This gives a visual lift to the lines of the boat, making it seem lighter, as a feather floating on the water. 100 years later, we see that the gondola hasn't changed so much, other than the fact that it has grown in length and the bottom has become more curved, and the blacksmith has beaten the head even more into an axe shape.